what's the benefit? I ask people, what's the benefit of you doing something you burns you out?
Mm.
There is no benefit. And I had the same thing with keeping my own books. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I could do it. My graduate degree is in economics and finance. Like I can do it. QuickBooks, I can
Mhm.
figure it out. Take an hour class or whatever on QuickBooks but it's like, or I could pay an accounting firm quarterly, to do it.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek Podcast. Today we have Ryan Crittenden. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching, the importance of coaching. Um, as all of you know that I'm an entrepreneur, and I always talked about having a mentor, always having a mentor, having coaching. Don't do things alone. So we're going to talk about the importance of coaching and why you should hire Ryan to be your coach. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Absolutely. So a little bit, or I should say Dr. Ryan, maybe, if that's, ladies and gentlemen, he does have his PhD. So tell us a little bit about, very short moment about who you are and what made you decide to get into coaching.
Yeah, so I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with my wife and twin toddler boys. Um, and I got into coaching, coming up to 9 years ago, because I saw the power of what coaching can do, and it really changed my life.
Mhm.
And so, uh, now, like I like taking that experience I had and passing it on to other folks. So that's why I got into coaching. Of course, I've had some other business ventures, but it always coaching. There's just nothing more powerful to coaching to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I enjoy it also. It's giving back, but I love getting paid to do it instead of, you know,
Right.
Mike, tell me how to buy hotels. It's like, can we meet for lunch? I'm like, you know, how about hiring me, for
Yeah,
this and
exactly.
that. Because all my blood, sweat, and tears of learning it is worth something, right?
hmm
Um, so what type of coaching do you focus on, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, I focus on strengths-based leadership coaching. So I tend to work with entry-level leaders or people that are wanting to get their first taste of leadership, up to I've even coached some C-suite leaders. So everybody up the game. Um, and we focus on strengths. So I initially use the Clifton Strengths Assessment. I have
Mhm.
a really intentional coaching program that I call Strengths Foundations, where we really dive into one, who the leader is, but then we're also going to understand who they're not,
Mhm.
um, which is equally important, I think.
Absolutely.
And in my personal experience, when I went through this, it was in a little different kind of context, but it was so freeing when I
Mhm.
started to see on paper who I was not, and it gave me permission. It gave me even more permission to be who I was.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing. So we do that. Also take clients and their teams through Strengths Foundations and the
Mhm.
6 types of working genius, which is great for teams. Really help identify just the areas that you really just excel in, and kind of blend the two. Um, on an individual basis, then we go through. Uh, they have identified what they want to work on and what their goal is. After we do those things, we set the foundation based on their strengths and how they're growing in their strengths. We move forward through more International Coach Federation standards of coaching, meaning that the coachee comes up and says, "All right, I want to work on my next promotion." We start,
Mhm.
dialing that in. We kind of work through there. Um, but yeah, that's a little bit about how I do it on an individual leadership basis.
And is it more people that work for someone else that are maybe wanting to move up in the ranks versus the person that is an entrepreneur that just started their own company?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. I have worked with everybody. Now, the unique thing when you're working with an entrepreneur that wants to, dive more into their strengths and even the
Mhm.
six types of working genius, they're one of the things that they're trying to figure out is um, the who they're not becomes really important
Yes.
because then they need to start, finding other people or building their team around who they're not so that they have a really sharp and developed, but also well-rounded team.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember, and ladies and gentlemen, I've always had, coaches and mentors, and I remember that first thing I'd been doing what I do for a while, and I was like, oh man, this coaching stuff, I don't want to do this, but everyone says in all these books I read, they say, get the coach and do it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm,
And what what they said was what they taught me, and I think is what you're getting around is what my unique ability is.
hmm
Who am I? What's my personality? What am I good at? And why am I doing all the other stuff?
right.
I hate accounting, but why am I paying the bills?
Mm,
And so it's finding your strengths, ladies and gentlemen, because all of us have our own strengths. We have our own personalities. And I found out what mine was. And it was at that point when I said, okay, I'm going to concentrate on what I'm good at and hire those people that are good at doing those things. And then you develop a team, right? And then all of a
yep.
sudden it's just liberating. I was like, oh my God, now all of a sudden I just started growing as a company. Um, how important is it, and what do you do to get through to people that maybe just with the entrepreneurs, they don't want to spend the money. It's like you get into this thing, and I was there too. It's like I did every
hmm
job because for number one, I didn't think anyone could do it better than me. That's that
hmm
entrepreneur downfall. And boy, was I wrong. So how do you get through the mindset of, look, guy or gal, you're an analytical person, so why are you doing creative marketing?
hmm
You know, how do you get through to people?
Yeah. Now I will say I worked with a marketing team at a large Fortune 500 company, and they all were analytical folks. They were data. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't have really great personalities. The team event was pretty kind of dry, but it was fascinating on like a psychology aspect to see them and how they were really fantastic marketers, and they were great people. So don't get me wrong, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, for me, um, I so I'll actually I think I could know a better way to answer your question. What's what's the benefit? Ask people, what's the benefit of you doing something you burns you out?
Mm.
There is no benefit. And I had the same thing with keeping my own books. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I could do it. My graduate degrees in economics and finance. Like I can do it. QuickBooks, I can
Mhm.
figure it out. Take an hour class or whatever on QuickBooks but it's like, or I could pay an accounting firm quarterly, to do it in 15 minutes. My books aren't complicated, fortunately. But what's the benefit of me taking that hour away from a time from connecting with you or connecting with another client? Um, there is no benefit. That's not
Mhm.
what I started my company to do. I started my coaching company because I wanted to connect with people and not because I wanted to sit and do my own QuickBooks.
Mhm.
So really you have to ask yourself, what's the benefit of me doing it? And a lot of times it's no. There's none. So I might as well pay a little bit, free up my time, and reinvest my own time. Because I can't, you can always earn money back, but you can't earn time back.
Mm.
Um,
Very
and
good.
so the same thing when I started realizing like what the power of the six types of working genius did for me, for those that are not familiar with that, it's a really simple, great assessment. helps you identify your areas of genius. And they have an analogy of, we were talking about flying planes, and how, amazingly enough, the analogy of flying a plane. Well, and each step of flying to, hey, we should land the plane. And then someone figures out where they need to land. And then there's geniuses along the way to landing the plane. Well, sometimes, you're the entrepreneur, you are a one-man show. There is a season where you're going to have to fly and land the plane and then fuel it up and take it back off. But as soon as you can start, you know, getting rid of those steps, you should. But my geniuses are flying the plane.
Hmm.
And so the sooner that I can figure out who can land the plane and do these other things for me, the more passionate I'm going to stay about my work, my company, and the more energy I'm going to have. So we were talking about like it takes time. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't have to ask permission, to
That's
do
right.
things. But I'm also passionate because as much as I can, I try staying flying the plane. And I have other people that are landing the plane, i.e., my bookkeeper.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and that's very good. And you're happier, because not you're doing what
totally.
you love, instead of doing all the other stuff. I'm more of an economics person, so it's like
Hmm.
accounting. Accounting is horrible. They do the debits and credits backwards, and it's just all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Like how's a negative a positive, and what is this stuff?
Yeah.
So it's like so I don't do it. Because
Yeah.
I hate it. And why would I do what I hate? Well, maybe to save 10,000 a year, 20,000 a year. It's like it's not worth it. And like you said, it's
Yeah.
just the time. Um,
Yeah.
how how do you well, I'll change up a little bit. So I want to know before we move on a success story where you're coaching significantly impacted someone or changed someone's life, probably like Mike
Mm,
did with me. So give me something, a feel good story. It's like, oh, wow, this person, you're so proud of this person after you've
yeah.
coached. Curious about growing your wealth, the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. That's why we've partnered with Bob Bernatas of Franchise with Bob. He specializes in helping investors like you leverage franchising, an overlooked but highly profitable way to create semi-passive income. And for a limited time, Bob is giving our listeners access to his course on franchising investing for free. Inside, you'll learn how to evaluate franchises, minimize risk, and maximize returns. This course is normally priced at $499. Don't let this pass you by. Go to edu.franchisewithbob.com/RG and get your free course today.
Yeah. There's one story in particular that I do like to share because it was so fun. I was working with a small team of executives. Um, team 4 or 5, I believe. I just remember two in particular. But during our team coaching event, the CEO and the COO, as we really got looking at everybody's strengths, they both were like, I suck at this role. And they switched roles. And they were small enough to where they could do that. But
Yeah.
it was neat to see this conversation go on with these young executives just trying to figure out how to grow their company, but also like know and love their strengths and
Mhm.
know and love their team members' strengths. And they were able to do that. And it was super neat. And actually every time I think about it, I'm just like, man, that was so great. Because they started an awareness of themselves and then it grew an awareness of others. And then it turned into personal and professional growth for everybody once
Yeah.
they realized what seat in the plane they needed to be on.
There you go. And ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, it's Ryan Crittenden at excelcoaching.net. How do you, it's like, man, I'm burned out, uh,
Mm,
struggling. What advice? It's just like, and now I work for a tech company that's making me go into the office,
hmm
the return to the office thing, and I'm working all these hours, and I'm burning out. It's for me, it was important to take at least an hour a day of my time. It's just
Hmm.
doing things like that. But what advice would you give people that are just, man, I'm not happy?
Yeah. First thing, kind of like you just alluded to, take a nap.
Hmm,
As when you can start to initially refresh and reset, you can think a lot more clearly.
hmm,
But yeah, so there's a few things on burnout. Sometimes it's not necessarily that you are working too much. I think that is an aspect, but burnout leads to something a little bit deeper. It's a cultural aspect of the company.
hmm,
Um, and and you may or may not be able to influence that. But let's just say, like, you can't influence that. Um, so I always say, take a nap, refresh when you're in a right mind to be able to engage people positively and keep, your relationship with your boss or someone more important than any problem. You can handle issues a lot better than if you go in, you're tired, and you just feel pegged out. Um, let's bring the tension down. See what you can do to whether see what you can do to engage your strengths in your job more. And hopefully, if you're coming out at this being trying to keep a good relationship with your boss, your manager, supervisor, hopefully they're able to engage with that. But if they're just, and I even had this a while back where I was feeling burnt out and I was trying to engage. And I just had to leave the company because it was something deeper than I was working a lot of hours. It was a cultural aspect of the company that was broken and
hmm.
nobody wanted to address it. And I was the one kind of calling it out, saying, this stuff is broken. Can we have a conversation about this? And they just didn't want to. And it got to a point where I was like, it's better for me and my health and my sanity. I need to go. So that's an option. But if you can't engage with your employer, or if they don't want to engage back with you, and the status quo is fine,
Yeah,
um, either you got to be okay with it too, or maybe you might need to look at somewhere else. But
yeah,
try to stay in, fresh, level-headed, keeping relationships more important than problems.
yeah. And I know it's hard, with the burnout and with because of the culture in America with working. Most employers, it's not all of them, they don't care.
Hmm.
It's bottom line. Get your ass to work. And now you see, companies are saying not only do you have to work 80 hours a day, but now you have to commute. It's the
Yeah.
return to office. So that's going to be another layer of I know someone that has to go into work. It took him an hour and a half to go 7 miles
Oh man.
and in the Pacific Northwest.
Mm.
Now there's this other, mental thing, part of that, and that's both ways, so um, I think the coaching and not only the business side of coaching, but just the mental side of coaching is extremely important, and just defragging your brain a little bit, whether it's and a lot of people are like, oh man, I get up at 6 a.m., I get home at 8 p.m., I eat
Hmm.
dinner, play with the kids for an hour, and then I'm in bed, so it's very hard. How do you, with someone like that, how do you sit there and say, hey, look, it's easy enough to say, go work out in the middle of the day, or go take a break, cold plunge, do whatever you take, whatever your thing.
Hmm.
A lot of people just, they can't do it, and is it just, like, well, if you have to commute, listen to a good podcast, listen to different music. I mean, what do you tell those people that, like, I don't have time. I can't take a nap in the middle of the day.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That does come up. So there's other things you'd have to, um, you just have to we just have to get creative.
Hmm.
Um, find what initially was lighting the fire for that person.
Mm.
And and for me, when I in that role that I was leading to, I was one of the top performers in our region at least.
Yeah.
Um, and and I kind of had to sit back and I was like, hey, like I have twin toddlers. At the time they weren't toddlers.
Hmm.
And I was like, what's more important? Um, I was like, I'm replaceable at work.
Hmm.
A matter of fact, I've been replaced two or three times already. I am long forgotten, but I am not replaceable at home.
Mm.
And it's not like, I'm the sole income earner. Like
Hmm.
it's not even that. It's the fact that my boys know who I am. And my
Yeah.
wife and I still love each other.
Yeah.
Um, and hopefully that continues on, right? And I know my boys. And
Mm.
so it's like what's most important?
Mm.
And when you get the what's the most important figured out, and maybe you don't have a family, and maybe it really is just your career, and like that's what you have, and that's what you love. We can figure out. But the first thing is like, what is what's lighting the fire? Why do you even want to do this? Remember, at work, you're replaceable. At home, you're not.
Yeah.
Um, and I even saw, and it's a reality. I think I saw on LinkedIn a while back, and it's the same thing. In 72 hours, if you pass away and you're employed, the job posting's up.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast, but um, you can't just throw out a yard sign for a family member.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's I think what's really important is, figuring out what's lighting the fire. Then you can figure it out. Like, and I wouldn't want to drive an hour and a half to work one direction.
Yeah.
And I do travel here and there, for coaching and working with teams and stuff, but it's not an everyday thing.
Hmm.
So you can make those exceptions. There's, things about that. But yeah, I would encourage someone if you're in that kind of spot being like, man, what? Yeah, I'm burnt out. I can't take a nap. But figure out what lights the fire in you. Why are you doing what you're doing? And then you can kind of start going from there.
Hmm. Yeah. And very wise words about, the work and home life balance, that is
Hmm.
extremely important because, and I think as you get into the younger generations, they're seeing that more.
Hmm.
My parents, there was no work home life balance. They just worked.
Right.
And then you have my generation, and then it's like, yeah, well, I mean, we're kind of like the last generation of, yeah, you know, yes, sir, you don't,
Hmm.
no, ma'am, yeah, you're there and working. And as these generations, the millennials and the Zs, they're like, oh, wait a minute, time out. You know, you don't care about me, I don't care about you. It's
Right.
and this is the way it is. Yes, so there's something about that mental health type of a thing that I didn't have. You just
Hmm.
sucked it up and you did the work,
Yeah.
because there's the feelings didn't matter. Um, so it's very, very interesting. So one thing that God, I've always hated, um, the team workshops.
Mm.
Why are they important? Because here's the thing, it's like I'm not going to go fall backwards and have someone catch me. And it's like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so maybe it's my mindset. It's like going, God,
Yeah.
another team. What role do they have? The importance of it's like, okay, let's just suck it up and go to this team workshop, get to know each other and sing Kumbaya, and I'm
Yeah.
making fun of it, but I know they're very important. So, what role do they play?
Yeah, no, that's great. And sometimes I call them workshops, and I've heard some people be like, you should call them experiences, team experiences. And maybe that's a better name. I don't know. I'm pretty straightforward. I don't think there's
It's an
it.
experience.
Yeah. I don't try to use fancy words or anything. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
One one there has to be an intentionality behind a team because usually it's a huge expense for an
Hmm.
organization to have a team take a Friday off or and go. Now, um, on the flip side, there's great ROI on it. So,
Mhm.
but the way that I approach it is when I first initially work with a team, everybody goes through the Strengths Foundation coaching.
Mhm.
So they're going to start developing a common language. They're going to understand one, who they are and who they're not. So then when we get to the team event, they can actually, when we start talking about the strengths and who the team is and who the team isn't as a collective whole, they
Mhm.
have that common language, they have a common knowledge, and they can actually start identifying things in each other. And I like to leave a lot of white space in there so that the team can interact with these principles of being strengths based in leadership and in their employment. And what does that mean? What can they really contribute to their team in a unique way? And so it could be really powerful. It's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah, well, I kind of like that more instead of just doing stuff. It's like
Yeah,
you're putting in some classroom, time and learning some things instead of the trust.
yeah.
Trust your teammates. And I'm like, I don't trust them. I know
Well,
those. I
so
know those three guys, and they'll let me fall.
right. Now, trust actually does almost naturally be developed. But yeah, we don't have to, we do some extra, not like
Yeah,
the trust fall exercise, but we do some
yeah,
things that are engaging and stuff. But there's a lot of white space to really
yeah. That's
engage
good.
with each other. Yeah.
That's good. Because if you know your team well enough, it's like going, I'm not falling back with that guy because
Right.
I know
He
what he's.
might, this guy would probably fall forward and blame it on me. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Ryan, so let's say before we let you go, people are going to be visiting excelcoaching.net. Where are they going to find? How do they
Yeah.
get a hold of you? What kind of information? What's on the website?
Yeah, so pretty straightforward at excelcoaching.net. And I will say Excel stands for my sons, Xander and Lucas. So if you have something also creative, I always love hearing them. Some of it is my extreme leadership coaching was one of my favorite ones. But it stands for Xander and Lucas because I love my boys. Um, but you're gonna see some leadership stats. First off, some ROI of coaching. Um, More of what coaching is, and you'll see a simple process for individual leadership coaching and development. I have three different coaching packages, and you can connect with me there. You can schedule right on my calendar from excelcoaching.net. There's a big button on the side or up top on the side, or you can just email me also at ryan@excelcoaching.net.
There you go. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Crittenden, XL Coaching. Um, it changed my life. I think everyone needs coaching, everyone needs mentorship.
Absolutely.
And it allowed me to grow because what it did, some of the coaching, ladies and gentlemen, smacked me upside the head. Some of it
Mm.
I fought to the teeth, because I didn't want to change. But in the end, trust the coaches, trust the mentors because they'll make you a better person and made me a better person and a better entrepreneur. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the Richer Geek Podcast. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thank you very much for having me.